Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I am very excited because I am chatting today with Andrea Frayser. And we were just chatting with each other about the fact that we've been online friends for a very, very long time. How many years now?
I can't even remember. I was trying to think of that when I was coming on. I really can't remember. It's been a while though. Yeah.
It has been some years, and we've kind of been following each other's careers and admiring each other from a distance. And now we are finally getting together to have a conversation because we've both published books and we both have experiences with book publishing that we would like to share with all of you today. So, Andrea, over to you. I'm going to ask you just to introduce yourself to everybody who's watching, give us a little background about who you are, and tell us a little bit more about your books and why you wanted to publish them.
Okay. Well, to start with, my name is Dr. Andrea Frayser. I'm a retired doctor of natural medicine, and being a naturopath actually brought me into the journey of book publishing. I used to volunteer to go into the inner city, Washington, D.C., where it was a food desert. My sister, who's also a doctor, was working with an organization there to help people get access to healthy food, learn how to make healthy meals, because we saw a correlation between the behaviors of children and their future behavior as far as being in the corrective system. And it was tied back to things such as nutrition and healthcare, et cetera. So we were trying to address these needs at the core. And I developed a program that was helping these individuals to get healthy foods into their community, natural foods into their community. Because when you go into their stores, you see processed canned foods, you see a lot of artificial foods, not a lot of natural foods. Most of the children that I was dealing with had never eaten a fresh orange. They'd never seen a fresh orange. And we brought them out, we put them on the table, and there were kids throwing these oranges like they were balls because they thought they were toys. And oh my gosh, my job is, really huge. So through that program, we were able to connect with farmers that just like on the outskirts of this city that didn't know that there was a need or that people wanted their fresh produce there. And once we got the food in, we found that people had no idea how to cook it or prepare it. So it was going to waste. And that's when I started pulling together recipes. Okay, well, what's an inexpensive recipe that a mother could put together that would get the most nutrition into their child? And each week when we'd meet, I'd give out these recipes. There was a gentleman there who was observing from the government. And he pulled me to the side and he says, listen, what you're doing here is very important. It's extremely important work. These recipes are great. They're easy to make. The goal at that point in time was that we would be able to feed a family of 5 on less than $200 a week, wow, which was unheard of, but it was doable with the idea of just working with ingredients and knowing what you had. And he asked if I would be interested in writing a book. So at the time, my ego kicked in and I said, oh, yes, I would love to write a book. And up until that time, I really hadn't considered the possibility that when you have someone telling you that what you have is so significant and that it should be in a book, wow, that was all it took. So I came home and instantly I told my family, I'm writing a book. I did not have any idea what that was going to entail. Previous to this, what I was doing is writing down the recipes of the food I was making for my family or that I wanted to make for my family, sharing this with people. After that, I had to standardize. I had to go out and shop different locations close to their location in other cities. So we went up to Baltimore and just a lot of time on the road trying to get a good idea of what it was that was available in these areas. And the price tag started going higher and higher, just preparing to write this book. And my kids, if you ask them, the biggest cost to them in writing the book was that I would have these gorgeous meals set out on the table and they couldn't eat until the pictures were taken. So they'd be sitting there like, Mom, oh my gosh, it smells so great. It tastes so good. Don't go near that. We didn't get our picture. So it costs, we laugh about it now. My kids weren't very happy about it then. But that entire process, I did not realize was costing me money. I had to have all of that prepared to bring to the publisher before we could even talk about having a book.
Yes.
So when we look back at what it had cost just in mileage going from place to place and just the time and buying extra food, because standardizing a recipe, you have to make it several times. And it was costing me in the thousands. Well, of course, the publisher says, oh, you'll make that back in no time. We're going to really push this book. We're going to get you in advance and you don't have to worry about it. It's going to be great. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's going to be great. So
you had a publisher.
I did have a publisher.
And how did you find the publisher? Because for a lot of people, that's the challenge.
He found me.
Okay.
He found me. I did not go looking for him, but I will say this, that relationship fell apart. So after I was told that I would get an advance of $1,200, and that they
That's not really a lot, is it?
Oh, no, but it sounded like it was going to be just a little, the way they presented it, it sounded like that was just the beginning.
Okay.
That it was just, oh, $1,200, you'll make this back in no time because we're really going to push the book. And this is so relevant. And I'm thinking, yeah, sure, and it's a small publishing company. And I will say this, it was an African-American company. And I really felt that, okay, this is going into our community, it's from our community, they're going to look out for me. All of those foolish things that you think about people going in. And it turned out not to be the case. So once I got my advance and we started going from organization to organization, I did a lot of public speaking. These were public speaking events that I was not getting paid for, where outside of that, I would have gotten paid for. I have a contract to do public speaking, but because it was in line with the book and it was for the publisher, I didn't get paid.
Yes. Yes. Do you also feel that perhaps because you're working into that food security space, there's a sense that you should just do this for free?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially when you have the title doctor attached to your name. For some reason, people think doctor means wealthy.
Okay.
If you're a naturopath, you're not wealthy. And that was really the case, that when I was going out, those public speaking events were really looked at as my doing the community service that I owed to the community. And so there was nothing granted back to me in return except for gratitude. And I appreciated the gratitude. I appreciated hearing the stories of mothers who had used the program, who had used the book, who had benefited. Those things were important to me. I remember one gentleman who had changed his eating habit and got his blood sugar under control so he didn't lose his leg. Those stories were, you can't put a price tag on them. But I had a family of three children. Yes, and I had to buy food, and my husband's looking at me and saying, honey, we're spending a lot of money getting you these places. We're spending a lot of time with you traveling to these places, and you could be doing other things. You're spending time away from your practice because I can't be in two places at once. And the cost kept adding up. So when I addressed my concerns to the publisher, and then the fact that the first draft of the book that he presented me was nothing like he promised, we had a falling out. And we ended up giving back the $1,200, so it didn't last long, and went to the self-publishing mode because, of course, you have platforms like Amazon and other self-publishers, and that seemed like it was going to be the solution to all my problems.
The optimist.
I was ever the optimist. I went through the process of converting what we had to the format that could be self-published through Amazon. And that was done over 12 years ago. And since that time, my book has sold.
Okay.
However, I've made less than $100 in royalties.
Wow.
Yeah, and as I told you before, my last royalty check was less than $2.
Wow.
Why did you all even bother telling me you have royalties? And here's the thing that people don't understand. If you self-publish, especially through Amazon platform or other platforms like that, they have your book priced in the buy box, and it's going to be the most expensive one there. And then they have this little blurb that says it may be available from other sellers for less. And usually those other sellers are all Amazon, just different names for companies that the profits go back to Amazon. So Amazon gets a portion of, through Kindle Publishing, they get a portion of your proceeds because you self-publish through them and they're doing the print on demand. Then if they're the individual that's selling the book, the rest of the money goes back to them too. So the work that you're doing as an author, and you addressed that beautifully in one of your posts, and I really appreciated that. The work that you've done as an author to promote your book, the work that you've done in your brand to promote the book, you sold the brand. If they look and they have an option of buying your book for $15 or for $5, they're going to take the $5.
Absolutely.
And they think, oh, you're still getting paid. I'm still supporting the author, and you're not. And you're not. So my book is ranked.
Or the favorite, Melanie, I've supported you. I bought your book secondhand somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. How did I benefit from that?
You did it. You did it. And that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with you, because there's so many nuances that people don't understand. They really think, I'm supporting this person. I love this person. I love what they represent. And I'm going to buy this book because their name is on it. But in actuality, we as the author make very little of that money, if any, if any. And when we do, it's come so far after it was needed.
Yes.
That, we appreciate the support, but rarely is it at a time when you're really recouping. So I've realized that I will never be able to recoup what we've put into it. I will say that I've been blessed many times over because of the work that I've done. And because of having the book, it did open avenues for me that I wouldn't have been able to do. So I've been able to do some pretty amazing things in food insecurities. I've been able to do really amazing things and meet some famous people and sit on boards with them and talk to them. And I would not have been able to do that if I had not had that book, and if they couldn't go on Amazon and see that I was a legitimate author. So I'm not saying that it was a complete loss, but I will say that it wasn't the windfall that I was expecting. It really, truly wasn't.
Or that the people around you assume is happening.
Yes.
I had a guy say to me the one day, you're now a published author, you must be a millionaire. I said, okay, do the maths. We published 5,000 copies and I get R6 a copy.
Right. Exactly.
How is 30,000 millions?
Yeah. It doesn't add up. And, but I will say for you, Melanie, I'm glad you published your book.
Oh.
I'm glad you did that, because when I found your book, the first time I was exposed to your book, it was at the library with my kids. Okay. And I picked it up because the cover just drew me in. And I said, oh my God, I have to have this book. I can't just borrow it. I need to buy it. So I went to the bookstore and I bought the book. Okay. And I went through and I did the exercises. I did the things that you were talking about. I devoured that book. And I came in, I told my husband, I said, this is what I want to do with my life. I said, she's dyeing fabric and is walking the runway. And this is what I want to do with my life. And he's so supportive. He's like, honey, if that's what you want to do it. But we know it's not that easy. So I ended up teaching dye craft classes. And then I saw your book on scarves. And I said, oh, this is perfect, because I could get a group of ladies together.
Yes.
We could get the scarves pretty inexpensively.
Yes.
We had to dye in the studio, and we would get together and dye scarves and sip wine and talk. So I actually was made a lot wealthier from your book than I was from mine.
I love that story. That's so wonderful.
Yeah, so yeah, again, just I think that one of the things we need to consider too is what the true value and what the true wealth of what we bring is. And
Yes.
we're not seeing the monetary returns on our work.
Yes.
But for me, I know that I've impacted lives. And for you, you know, you've impacted thousands of lives. I mean,
Yes.
you've grown online because of who you are and what you've brought to our attention as a community. So I know I wouldn't have known who you were without your books. And
Yes.
I know that my life has been richer with your books.
Yes.
But just think of, you may not get it back immediately, but you definitely had a lasting impact. And had you not done what you've done, our lives would not have been as rich. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're giving me goosebumps. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's so meaningful to me. You know, maybe as writers, we need to go into writing saying, okay, I'm going to let go of the financial component. Yes. Consider this just as a door opener, an opportunity, yes. An opportunity to touch lives.
Yes, yes. And I think if we do that, we'll never come back lacking. Yes. We will always be wealthy. So yes, I think that's exactly what we need to do. If you guys don't get anything else from this, take yes. that wisdom.
Yes, yes. I think that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful, because I think a lot of writers out there at the moment are feeling a little bit kind of despondent. What's the point of writing if this is where books are?
Yes.
And particularly also because we're moving into the digital age, and it's kind of I don't know about where you are, but in South Africa, because especially with COVID and our economy is a mess and all of that, book buying is almost non-existent in our country.
Yes. Yes. When I took my grandchildren to buy books, I always did it with my kids. So of course I'm going to do it with my grandkids. We found one location that was a bookstore. It was smaller than a quick convenience store. It had a lot of magazines, not a lot of books. We had one row of children's books, and they had them all, so it really didn't help. And unfortunately, you find more books in the used bookstore market here. So we have several beautiful large used bookstores. We try to support them too, because at least they're keeping the books in the community. But you're absolutely right. Book buying is, I like to say, it's a lost art. There used to be a process you went through, you expressed, oh, I want to read a book about, and you went and you explored that, and you found that one perfect gem, and you brought that treasure home. Yes. And that doesn't happen.
You know, I remember that my mom used to take me to the store, and we used to spend hours just looking at everything on the shelf. And for me, it was such like a ritual once a month. Yes. To select the one that I wanted that was going to be my companion for the month.
Yes, yes. And children don't experience that now. People don't experience that now. And I remember my kids would line up and they'd have their books and they'd hold them to their chest because it was something special. And they'd be so excited about the idea of getting this book. And with my grandchildren, the youngest is 4. He still gets excited about a book. The older 3 is like, yeah, it's a book. Thanks, Mom. And then their faces are back in their phones and back into their tablets. But it really is sad, because it used to be an event. We would go to the bookstore. It would be an event. We would go, oh, we'll go for tea and we'll go select a book. And their selecting of that book was so, it was well thought out. And you could just see the excitement. And then they would clutch it like it was a treasure. And that the value of the spoken word, the value of the written word has been diminished so much now. And now, if they want entertainment, it's instant. It's like, oh, pick up your phone and pick up your tablet. It's not a treasure hunt anymore. And I wanted to rekindle that for my grandchildren. I've not been able to.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think books will die out completely eventually?
Eventually.
As we know them?
Yes. There will be a few who, like those who hold on to vinyl records, recognize the value. But really, and if I'm honest, I have not picked up. I used to have a goal of X amount of books a month. I have not picked up a physical book in years. Everything is on my phone. It's on my tablet. We have downstairs bookshelves. We've always had a library, and I was looking through the library yesterday, and I realized that we have not added to that library in a number of years. There are no new books for us there. We get new information. We're always learning, but it's all done on our phone. It's all done on our tablet. It's all done on the computer. And I really do believe that books as we know it and bookstores as we know them, they're not going to be around much longer, which is unfortunate.
Well, so there's also this other part of me that's saying, I'm very mindful they chop down trees.
True. True.
Deforestation and all of that.
Yes.
So possibly with our global warming goals,
well,
we
there's
should
a
be
positive
moving away from books.
We should, and I'm going to say this, Melanie, I agree with you 100% with that. I hadn't considered it before. I think for me, being of African-American descent, for me, a book represented in my youth the ability to have change. So my great-grandmother was born a slave. She came out of slavery and was as educated as a Black woman could be at that time, which meant that she was educated to the point of being a teacher. Her children were the first to be able to go to college and to get a degree. Their children, which would be my mom, were in the 60s during the Civil Rights March. And the tool that was given to Black children that could not be taken away was the written word. So we had people like Langston Hughes and others who were writing these stories, and they were telling our tales. And when I came along, a book was always in my hand. And my great grandmother lived with us. She was still alive, and she would say, "Child, you got to put this in your head because they can't take it from you." So for me, a book always represented a path to freedom and a path to change. My ancestors were killed for knowing how to read. And that was always told to me that my great grandma would say, "Honey, if my mama had known how to do this, she would have died." And so I have an attachment to books that maybe others don't, because it was so tied to what we couldn't do. And it's always been tied to who we could become. So who would have thought that that little girl that was talking to this woman that was a slave would one day be a doctor and would one day write a book? So I have an attachment to books, I think, because of that, coming out of that culturally, that it represents so much that could be. And I do need to change my perspective and realize that the impact it's having on our world, because the world is bigger than I am. Although, human, I sometimes forget that. The world is bigger than I am. And I really need to think about what is going to impact the change for generations to come. And having a world that's sustainable is far more important at this point in time. And they're still learning to read. They're still getting the information. So I appreciate you allowing me to have that adjustment in my thought process, because I hadn't realized that I was holding on to that, but I really do need to change.
And I only bring it up because my own path of creation has led me to that point. So I have a lot of people say to me these days, "Why aren't you making this? Or why don't you make that? Or why don't you make that to sell? You can make so much money." And I keep coming back to, how can I run the Cloth Collective and make any product new product.
Exactly.
Because it seems disingenuous for me to go out there and say to people, reduce your consumption while I'm asking them to buy products that I'm making.
I agree with you.
And that's why it's not because I think you should change. I think it's in fact, I love the way that you say that it's your path to freedom and your path to change. It is so beautiful that it represents that in your life.
Yes.
And in mine, I've just come to this very strange place where in my 20s and 30s, I was all about product. And now I'm going, I don't believe in product anymore. And how do I redefine my world around that? And how do I make a living without product?
Right. And that really is the thing, because you came into my life because you were producing. I would have never known you had you not been producing. And how do you take that? You really have set a legacy for yourself as a producer, but now you're more mindful, you're more aware of what you were a part of. How do you change that so that you're still able to bring your gifts to all of us? Because you are so stinking gifted, it makes no sense. Oh my goodness, unbelievable. And you have such an amazing eye for design and for form and for function. And I love it because I've seen you pull things together. How in the world did that brain come up with this wonderful thing? But in having that amazing gift, you really are put in a place where, how do you share that gift? How do you benefit from that gift without causing more harm? I don't know what that answer is. That is really a challenge. Wow. But whatever it is, you're going to be amazing at it. I know that.
Thank you. So it's been very interesting with the Cloth Collective. When I started it, I didn't realize how much it was going to push back on me.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that because it was one day, it was one thing. Yes. And then it felt like within weeks, it just exploded.
Yes. You were there.
Yes. It's like, oh, what happened? And I remember I was planning, the project I was planning to do is I wanted to do a mama bear and a baby bear. And I was going to use the cloth that you were going to send, and I was going to use some of my cloth that I had here, and I was going to use pieces together so that it could be just a melding of cultures, etc. And then I looked, I said, oh, wait a minute. What is this? So you adapted beautifully, by the way. You did an amazing job at adapting, but I'm sure you probably had that moment like I did, like, what happened?
You didn't see what went on behind the scenes. It was very messy for a while. I almost threw it away more than once. I was,
oh, wow. So I'm glad you didn't.
And having had this conversation with you today, I'm so pleased I didn't.
I am glad either. Oh my goodness, yes.
Thank you.
Well, Melanie, maybe, and I'll just put this here, maybe at this point in time, because I just had this conversation with a friend of mine who also just recently retired, that your call isn't so much as to produce a product, but to use what you know to make us wiser. And I think that you've done that in the group, but maybe you could take that message elsewhere. And you know, as a public speaker, I can tell you that there's a nice little return on that. But maybe that's what you need to be doing now, or could be doing now, because your story is so compelling with so many levels. So many levels. And just if we looked at you overcoming your fears and doubts to step into the path that you thought was yours, you, my goodness, you don't even understand how strong you can make others just sharing that journey.
Yes.
I just want to plant that in your heart. Hopefully it'll grow. Hopefully it'll help.
So it's very, very interesting. I've just gone through a fellowship process with the certified community managers in Facebook. So they very kindly gave me an opportunity to participate in a fellowship program. And one of the things that came out is they asked us, what is going to be your job after your next job? And,
wow.
and the one that I thought of was to be a public speaker. So thank you
Yes,
for affirming that maybe is the next step for me. I appreciate that very
absolutely.
much.
And I hope one day that will bring you to the US, preferably on the East Coast, so I can actually put my arms around you and hug you in person.
I'm so there.
So, and I would love to be there while you are sharing your journey, because when I tell you that you've inspired me, you just don't even understand to the depth that you did, because I did not understand that as a creative, I was able to make anything that could be significant and change a life. And when I was exposed to your books, I realized that I could create and not just make pretty things, but make a change. And that making a change was so important. And some of the work that we did with your book on scarves, we're working with women going through chemo, and we would dye the fabric, and we would do a whole weekend. We would dye fabric and find objects and do our version of a lino print, which was, yeah, it was dodgy. But we would do these things, and they would make their prints, and we would wrap their heads, and they would come out just glowing. And at the end of that weekend, they were glowing, but they were glowing because of the seeds you planted in me that I was able to share with others. So absolutely know that your work has not been in vain. It is impacting lives even beyond me. My sister, who I was telling you about, is a cancer survivor, and it was her idea to do the weekend workshops, the Weekend Cancer Warrior workshops. And she wanted me, she says, listen, you got to take those scarves you've been making. We're going to do this. We're going to share with these ladies, and they're going to do this. And we've tie-dyed t-shirts in different shades of pink because of the Pink Ribbon campaign. All of that stemmed from you. Wow. You were the catalyst for all of that. So I just want you to know how you've inspired all the way over here.
Wow. Mind blown. Thank you. Mind blown.
Yeah. So
that's meaning. I can sleep tonight.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad. I've always wanted to tell you this. I told you I'm having a total fangirl moment, because you really empowered me to embrace creating in a way that made meaningful change.
Oh, wow.
And I did not know that was possible until I read your books.
Wow. Wow, that's so interesting. So up to that point, you just viewed it as something you did on your own for yourself.
Yes.
Not something that you could use to
Yes.
relate to other people.
Absolutely.
Okay. Interesting.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
When I tell you, you changed my mind. It was so mind-opening. And when I thought about it, because previous to that, of course, you thought, oh, it's just a hobby. It's a craft. You make little gifts.
Yes.
But never did I think I would be in a group with women who were in different stages of cancer treatment.
Yes.
All of whom had lost their hair or shaved their hair, and they weren't feeling very beautiful, and they weren't finding much beauty in life. And taking what I learned from you and was inspired by you to spend the weekend with them. We would sit, we would talk, we would tie-dye and laugh, and they'd wait, because it's not an instant gratification thing. So we would have to wait till the next day, but these women were waking up excited. Yes. And they wanted to see what their dyes had done. And when we washed them out, we would all laugh and smile. And these women hadn't smiled in a while. There wasn't much to smile about.
Oh, this is so beautiful.
We doing all these things together. And at the end of the weekend, we're smiling, we're waving, we're laughing. And they left in such a better place. I was in a better place because, I'm all about the change and love and that sort of thing. And it happened because you stepped out in faith that what you had to give was worthwhile, and it is. It's very worthwhile. And I know that for producing right now may not be the thing for you. And I respect that immensely, because we do have a huge problem. We have a massive problem. At the same time, during that process of these women producing, they left with so much more than a t-shirt and a scarf.
Yes. Yes.
And that is, for me, that was the real beauty of it all. Not just spending time with these women, but to see them walking out with pride, because the thing that made them feminine had been restored in a different way.
Yes.
So
you're making me want to cry. Thank you. That was amazing. I thank you for that incredible reflection of how my books are having an impact beyond what I see.
They absolutely are. So I'm glad that I was able to share that with you. Thank you for sharing with us. I know that you weren't aware of the moment that my life was impacted, but I was keenly aware of the moment that I had that aha. And I owe that to you, and I thank you for that.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. Look what you've done with it. You grabbed it and you ran.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. That is amplification beyond my wildest dreams.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And I think we need to wind it up.
Yes, ma'am.
So I can go have a little cry.
I hope they're happy
to joy, I promise.
Okay.
So just some parting words for writers out there, Andrea.
I think that you hit upon it beautifully when you said that our goal in writing should not be to make money, but to make change. If we look at it as a vehicle for change and not a vehicle for wealth, then we will never be disappointed. And that's the direction I'm going to take from now on. If I pick up that pen again, it's going to be, I am writing to make a change. I'm writing that I hope that some lady in the library one day picks this up with their children and takes what they learn and run with it like you did for me. I'd love to do that for others. So when you're looking at writing your book, don't look at writing a book that's going to make you millions, but look at writing a book that's going to make a change.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your warmth, your enthusiasm, and those incredibly meaningful reflections for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Conversation.
You never get to tell people how much they mean to you and how much they've meant to you. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity. It's something that I've dreamt of for a very long time. Oh. So before I start crying, thank you. Peace and blessings.